and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. Got some amazing guests on. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Michelle. She's been 37 years in experience with businesses. She helps with business advisory and consultants to help people actually be successful in their business. That's her mainstream, but heavy into personal development. We met through that group I'm in, Arte, and incredible human. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Angela. It's great to be here. Yeah, I love that we intersected in a place of professional development, right? Personal and professional development, and they go together, right? They intersect. And I think so many people, when I look back at my life, the 37 years that you just, don't age me, but 37 years I've been an entrepreneur.
You
The
started at like
thing,
one.
yeah, 1 years old. The thing that has kept me lit up is the fact that if you're smart, you don't do entrepreneurship alone. Right. I always say, be really careful who you put in your front row. There's plenty of spaces in the arena, but the people that you put in your first two rows are going to be the most important people around you. And most times when you are in business, whether you're commission only based or you're whatever it is, like you just have a dream about something that you want to create. Most times the people that are in your inner circle, your family, your friends, they don't necessarily think like you. That was not me. I thought really big at a really young age. And my parents both worked for a municipality, like Main Street, like mom worked in finance, my dad worked in the public works department. And the traditional would have been like, yeah, you got to work for the city and you'll have a pension by the time you're 30 years in. And I just was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And I think that when you think differently, and even when you're trying to figure out why you think differently, if you don't have the right people around you, entrepreneurship is really challenging, highs, lows, all the crap. And it's also amazing. And so you've got to have people around you that are journeying it and also people that are further along than you. I can look at all of the places where I have been able to take bigger leaps in life. And it's because I had mentors and people like yourself and friends around me that were really emulating the resonance for where I was now, but mostly where I really wanted to go and the work and the impact that I wanted to make in the world. And I was in a boring business. Like people were like, "Oh, insurance is so boring." I was in property and casualty insurance after I spent 5 years in financial services. And hello, you're in insurance and financial services, and people are like, "How boring." I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was amazing. And it was just a different lens because I saw what I could create and I saw how I could help people and I saw what it did for me for freedom. And yeah, so 37 years. And I actually took an exit 13 years ago and sold my property and my share of my property and casualty agency. And this has been a whole new chapter where now I'm still doing advisory. I'm just not doing it through the lens of insurance, but I get to bring all of that knowledge of financial services and taxes and insurance and all of that to the table, but with this real emphasis for me on the path to profits. And it starts with understanding your money. It starts with the runway piece of really having an understanding of your personal finances and your business and then being married together.
So good. And guys, if you're not on YouTube, she's pointing at her book, which is called Path to Profits. We'll have all of that links, by the way, in the show notes. It's a great book. She's got some great stuff out there, so make sure to check it out. But yeah, that's so cool. So, what's one of the things that you see that people do that maybe stops them the most? I don't know if there's like a most or like the top five or the top three that are, what prohibits people from being successful in whatever business they're in as a broad spectrum.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is a lot of people misgauge the runway that it takes to actually get to the point where you have a level of financial success.
Hmm.
Most entrepreneurs that I come across, they have a lot of passion for the thing that they're going to do. They have a lot of, they feel their purpose. Are passionate about it. They have no lack even usually of like hard work, but they don't necessarily understand the financial runway because most people today have not had any education around personal finance, right? Trigonometry, algebra, statistics, calculus, we've gotten it all in school, but there wasn't this foundational, like, how do I handle money? And if they weren't taught at home, I mean, God, I had a chore of literally balancing the checkbook at like 12 years old. My mom gave me that
Same,
chore. But
same.
yet I moved out at 19. I left out of the house and I'm like, I'm never going to do that. right? So I left out with all this financial confidence, but I wasn't going to use the tools that actually made somebody have financial consistency because I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be like that. I was a big thinker. And so I made all of the mistakes thinking that even my just first journey into adulthood, I had a W-2 job that I was stepping into, but the runway into adulthood, I crashed. I literally crashed. I thought I didn't realize that shaving cream and razors were going to be like something I'd have to purchase. They were just there, you know? And so I think that the biggest mistake that I see is that people don't have the education, honestly, around personal finance. And then what happens is because they don't have tools, they don't have a system for their money, a budget or a plan. I don't even like the word budget, a plan for their money before it arrives each week or each month. They take that same thing into business, thinking that business is going to activate the freedom. But if they don't have systems around the money, and they have a bad mindset around the money, or they have a money story that hasn't been addressed or healed, or they're in a partnership, and there's two different ways that people handle money. It is one of the biggest roadblocks that I see because if you think your runway is going to be 6 months and really you needed 2.5 years, or you think your runway is going to be 60 days or 60, let's just say you think it's going to be $6,000, of cash reserves, but what you really find out is that you needed $150,000 of cash reserves because of the time that it took to get to the point where the business was creating consistent revenue that you could actually then live on. The one thing I hate, Angela, is like people say, don't create a job for yourself. And I'm like, oh my God, we want the business to pay you. So while you don't want the framework or the mentality about creating a job for yourself from a systems perspective and doing all the things that you then become the bottleneck to the business, the one thing I do say is approach your business as though you were going to take a job for me. I do a talk called I'm Hiring, Would You Take the Job? And I ask entrepreneurs to step back and just let me bring them through this fun exercise about, if you were to literally close the doors to your business tomorrow or next week, and I know that I can use your skill set and talent and make a bigger impact in the world. We put our pieces together and we build a great team. I know that they'd have to think long and hard about doing that, closing their doors. And so then I bring them through the exercise about if you were going to sit down and give me the laundry list, what are you asking me for? What are you going to ask me for, time off? What are you going to ask me for in regards to, do you need health insurance? Or if you're single, it's a yes. If you're in a partnership, maybe you don't, but like, are you going to ask me for the Cadillac plan? Are you going to be okay with my generic plan? Are you going to want a vehicle to save for retirement? Like everybody has the laundry list of what they'd ask me for, but we create that inventory. And then I'm like, what are you doing for you? And many times they've never sat down to do a CEO package. Even at the beginning of the business, you create that so that you know what you want the business to do. So a lot of it is, I think, lack of financial education, which then leads to financial avoidance, which then leads to missed opportunities, misaligned spending, and a sense of financial insecurity, imposter syndrome, stress, all of it, which is why I'm passionate about the money part of advisory first. And then when you know what it is you're trying to create, then the strategy of how do you close the gap between maybe where you are now and where you want to go. But that's really, if 66% of businesses today are still failing. And I think it's actually higher. I just think people have access to more credit and it gives them even a little bit more of a runway. It would be shorter if we didn't have that. And I'm grateful that we do, but it also shouldn't be the only means that people take chances.
And through that, let's dive into what you wanted to chat about a little bit. I think this will be good, is your word, creatorship.
Mm.
What do you mean by that? And what do you see like when people are doing this? Because I think that this all ties in is, people sometimes don't have cash flow because they're not creating.
Yeah.
They're in like survival mode. And
Yeah.
so, which is really easy to do. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when I think about creatorship, right, the word for me is creator thinking. Okay, like think back to when you were young. When was the first time that you created money?
Hmm. I don't know, probably like birthdays. I don't remember the first time I
Yeah.
felt like I created it, but I know I got money at
Yeah.
birthdays and
I
Christmas.
love that. I love that. Right. So then you're like, oh, birthdays are so good. They're juicy,
I
right?
know mine's
Because
on Sunday. I'm like, where's my birthday?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Happy birthday. So
Yeah.
yeah. So what's so beautiful about that is we learn early on that even if we didn't work for it, there was this like, oh, every year there's a creatorship that happens around this thing. Many times when you start to think about, okay, that was how money came to you, right? That there were specific times of
Mhm.
year, but then there's also the sense of like, well, how can I create it? So sometimes that's babysitting. For me, I think about my first like the first time that I realized that I could create something was a very young age. It was like a Burger King backyard fair. Like Burger King was like letting kids get these kits in the mail, and you could create this like backyard fair. They gave you like different
Oh,
activities to do, and they gave like coupons for burgers and whatever. Like there weren't like I don't think there was ice cream then, but my brother and I got the kit, and we were like, we're gonna create this great backyard fair, and we had to market it. We like put things up on the telephone poles, and we had 2 weeks, and we had a runway, and then we had all the neighborhood kids show up that Saturday for the backyard fair, and we charged for them to come in. And I realized, oh my God, now of course before that there was lemonade stands, and then it
yeah.
was this, but I had this sense that we actually can create money if we actually think about how we like be creative, not
Yeah.
not the negative part of like, oh, I'm only 10 years old, get away from
I
my
did that
birthday.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it for you when you
So
think
a few
back?
things we did, and I learned a lot because we did I did guppies. So guppies like prolifically reproduce, and so they have like baby guppies, and they're like you can't even see them. It's crazy. They're like a eye.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I would have baby guppies, and then I would put the baby guppies in I would buy a glass bowl, and I'd have like whatever rocks on the bottom, and I'd have these baby guppies. I just put a whole bunch in because some of them die, and then I would sell like the container. I don't
Yeah.
even remember what I sold them for. I did
Yeah.
that, and I did spider plants because they also have babies.
Oh
And so I
yeah.
would plant those babies and sell baby spider plants. And then the
Hmm.
one I really remember that was funny is I did cookies. And then mom, very business oriented, my mom says, let's charge you for the ingredients. And
Hmm.
so they broke down like how much a cup of flour was, half a cup, everything very, very specific. We broke down, and I realized I was not making money on the cookie endeavor. So now when people are like, I want to be a baker, I'm like, there wasn't much money in that baking thing.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because I figured it
But I
out.
love it because what happens, so this is exactly what happened. I love that you just gave that story because my best venture as a kid was selling night crawlers. Okay.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
I'd literally go out with the
So
flashlight.
creepy.
They're on the,
Oh,
yeah, right. They were creepy. I would wear a glove, whatever. But what I loved about it was that all I had to do was pick something out of the ground that was free and then literally put $1 on it and sell it. And the only thing that I had to do was take the containers that my mom bought, like potato salad and things like that. Like they were already there. So I didn't have a cost of goods sold, right? It
right.
was simply like take the marker you have in the drawer, take the Tupperware things that are in the leftover soup containers, whatever. And yet with the lemonade, you're 100% right. I was like, oh, because my mom was smart too. She's like, I'm not going to keep buying your lemonade, right? And so the cups, the lemonade, whatever, that you make your sign. But in the beginning, it feels like, wow, I'm making all this money. I can create money. And then there comes a point where you're like, okay, there are some businesses where that's true, where you can simply use your talents and there is no cost of goods sold. But most businesses have some level of cost of goods sold.
Hmm.
And but what I want people to think about is it's it's not just the power of positive thinking. It is about having inspiration, right? Most times I love saying to people, God plants the seed. Like when there's something there where you have this gift of like, there's a little bit of inspiration and you know it. You're like, I think this is meant for me because no one else around you has had this inspiration or idea. And maybe
Hmm.
somebody has, but you're inspired by what they've done. And
Hmm.
you see yourself, just, I guess, in insurance and financial services, you see somebody that's actually walked a path to freedom. They've helped other people, they're sharing their journey. And you're like, wow, I could use that same path and it's interesting to me, or maybe you go through something and then you want to align yourself with helping other people. So the path is there. So most times that is the entry point to entrepreneurship. There's a path, and yet somebody else, you're looking at them at the middle of their journey, not at the beginning, and so you've got some things to do. But it's not just the power of positive thinking and leaning into the inspiration. Sometimes you have this thought, you have to go into that place of creator thinking because, especially if your life is already started, you have kids, you have a job, it's like you might be inspired to start a business. And many times you're hearing, especially if it's an idea or seed that's new and nobody's done it before, you've got to be able to say, I don't know how, but I do know. There are some things that are given to you to do in
Mm.
the world, the impact you're meant to make using the gifts that you have. And many times people stop themselves because they're all in the what if negatives, not the what if, what's possible. So when I say creative thinking, it's literally asking yourself, I don't know how, but I do know. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I do know. And turning off the negative what ifs, turning even the people that are going to say, well, you can't just, sometimes I find myself doing it with my husband. I'll be like, well, you can't just, and then I'm like, yes, you can, right? You have to stop. Even for me, it was
Mm.
really important for me to shift my financial DNA. So I literally removed the words, we can't afford that. Now,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I'm willy-nilly with my money. I wasn't my kids, it wasn't a scarcity thing. It was I wanted to change my financial DNA and help my children adopt the creator thinking. So what that looked like for me at home was I pay for what you need, not for what you want. So when my son wanted the $300 pair of cleats, I never said he couldn't have them. I simply said, great, I pay for what you need. My budget for that is $75. If you want the $300 pair of cleats, how can you create that? So it was, we don't ask ourselves the right questions. So creator thinking is about really shifting to the channel that isn't the what if negatives. It's like, asking better questions. Because here's the truth, when you ask questions, the brain is going to answer.
Mm.
And many times it's either going to answer fear, which is always our loudest because our destiny hasn't been adopted yet. We're there. So the fear is going to try to keep you safe with the people in your circle who has scarcity mentality. You're going to do that. But the adopting of the creator thinking is really turning on that channel. Even when you hear yourself go, wait, that's not creator thinking. I don't even like saying it's scarcity mindset. It's not creator thinking. If I were to put on my creator thinking hat, what would the questions be that I would ask that I don't have the answers to, but maybe inspiration from God, maybe somebody that's sent to be a guide to me in my life, maybe it's sharing with another entrepreneur, right? What feels like a constraint, but all of a sudden they're like, that's not a constraint, right? What opportunities am I not seeing? How can I create this? What else is possible? Right. So right now, where are you?
Mexico.
Okay, well, fabulous. This is such a good example. You don't own a home in Mexico, right? But you created living in Mexico.
Hmm.
It wasn't an all or nothing, go big or go home. Well, if I can't live in Mexico full time, then I'm just not going to do it. I'll wait till the someday. Many people live
Hmm.
in the someday. You were like, how can I create this now? What is possible?
Hmm.
And so many people don't ask the right questions, right?
Hmm.
So that's what I mean. And I think what happens when we go to the creator thinking, we start to reverse engineer the solution. And by the way, it's not like, what opportunities am I not seeing and sitting there and just brain dumping everything? It's sort of getting quiet on your walk, in the shower, right? And all of a sudden it's like, because you're letting the question stir without having to be the one that gives the answer. Because there is the law of creatorship that we're creating together. And I think that a lot of times what happens is we go so quickly to the we can't that we're not leaving the space open to actually have the inspiration for the thing that could be possible. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's very common, 100%.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of our people where we're raised. So we copy a lot of where we come from. And so we
Hmm.
grew up with, I can't afford it. I can't do this. I can't, as opposed to like, how can you, or
Yeah.
I choose not to buy that thing instead of like even changing your mind, your words on it. Like
Yes.
that's not a priority for me right now.
It's not a priority for me right now.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a lot better feeling, even if quote, you can't afford it. It's better to just say, that's not a priority for me, which is true. It's not a priority. My priority is
Yeah.
food on the table or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
But that definitely changes the whole like the narrative that you're telling yourself and the feeling about it because you feel like you're like, oh, well, I could afford it. I just choose not to. And that feels a
Yeah.
lot better than like I can't. It's like almost anything in life. Like I'm on pretty strict what I eat thing. And a lot of people are like, oh, you can't have all this stuff. And I catch myself even saying that. And I'm like, no, it's not. I can't. I choose not to. Like,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
can. I
As
can
a
do whatever I want. I'm not like do whatever I want. I just choose not to. I choose not to drink. I choose not to do all these things. Nothing to do with
yeah.
I can't. I can. No one's holding a gun to my head and saying I can't. So,
Right, right.
you
Yeah,
know.
it's a different lens, right, to look through. And I think that I love that. I think when you just made me think of something, when I was going through my divorce, we had finalized the divorce. I was renting in the same neighborhood where we had built our home, right? We were just stabilizing things for the kids. There was another entry in that wasn't like I was right down the street, but it was in the same subdivision. And I remember I had started dating my husband now, and I just was like, he's my forever guy. I just knew it. I felt like he was my divine complement in life. And it was a very quick, like knowing. It was like a knowing that happened. And I was like, no, I'm just starting to date, whatever. But we were literally, I knew that we were going to be together. And he saw I think it was his cousin was putting a house on the market. He was a real estate agent, and he showed it to Jody. And I remember Jody showing it to me, and I was like, "Well, why would you even show that? Like, why are you even looking at that?" He had to sell a house. I had a lease, and I had 6 months left on my lease, and like he was just showing it. But when he showed it to me, I couldn't unsee it. Sometimes you can't unsee something. I went to bed that night and I was like, why can I not unsee this house? This house wouldn't even make any sense at this stage of the game. And something was like, go look at the house, go look at the house. And I'm like, I'm only going to go look at this house, get it out of my head. Because like none of this logistically makes any sense, right? And I remember driving down the driveway, 1,000-foot driveway, and it was fall, and all the leaves. So there was like literally New England gorgeous. And I drove up and I walk in and I felt it. I felt the God literally like the inspiration. I literally heard you're going to do retreats here. I was in insurance. I didn't do anything with client. I didn't do masterminds like private event luxury like I do now. Like it was a very like it. And I heard you're going to do retreats here, and I thought, well, maybe he will because I don't think that's I don't even know what you're talking about, but I felt it, and I felt it to the core. And I remember leaving that house knowing that I don't know why I was called here to this home, but I know that that's the next thing. Yet nothing in my world, financially, physically, any of it, emotionally, would have allowed that home to happen at all. It was double the home, like none of it. And I remember just thinking, okay, if this is something that I'm being inspired by, then I started asking myself these questions. Like, if this is for me, how could I create this? And it was like, why don't you just ask about the owners? Why don't you ask about the situation, like what's going on in their life as best you can to find out if there's a runway that they need? Is there a divorce? Is there a bankruptcy? Like what's going on with these people that they want to sell the house? Is there an urgency? I guess is the question. And when I asked the question, it was like, no, actually, they just think that this type of house and what's happening in the market is going to take a little while longer. So they're putting it on now. It wasn't like the market now where you don't want it to be on very long and
Mhm.
have people see the number of days because then it's against you. It wasn't like that. And then I remember thinking, the realtor shared that they had a senior in high school, and that was like 7 months away from them graduating him. And I had a 6-month lease. And I thought, oh, okay. So if they don't really want to leave the house. And the wife had messaged him at like 3 in the morning that she was really distraught about the fact they were putting it on the market. And I was like, wow, well, if so, is this a situation where if I bought the house that they would rent back from me? And he said, I actually think that could be possible. I don't even know where that language came from. I had never done a deal like that. And I just was looking for what's possible. And he turned around and went to them and they faxed their mortgage statement and said, we would absolutely rent back, but it can't be more than this. And I had already figured out the financial aspect on the other side while I was waiting for the answer of what I could afford. And it was that mortgage would have been that number. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. All of a sudden, we put together a contract. They didn't even show the house yet on the market. We get to put together a contract. They rented back. I bought the house. My landlord was not going to let me out. He was a home builder. I was able to let them stay there, collect rent. That was in October. The end of November, they called and said, are you solid on closing? You're supposed to close in December, like the 31st, and he had gotten a job and wanted to move earlier, and I got nervous. And I'm like, I need their rent. And he goes, they'll pay you your rent in full at the closing. We got to the closing December 30th, and not only did I get the house, I had the first 4 months of the house paid rent free, like 6 months, sorry, 6 months paid rent free. I moved in early and it all just magically happened. So again, I could never have jumped that up. Sometimes we have to stop and not talk ourselves out of what's there. But even in business, right? When you find yourself at that place where it's like, I don't know, I'm at a wall financially, the cash flow. If you know what it is you want to create and you're clear about like what it is you have in the gap, the real work comes with the action, the discipline, but also the creative piece of figuring the pieces out and reverse engineering how to get yourself there. Sometimes reverse engineering is selling stuff on eBay or, creating, because we can create money to get through the runway. I think one of the biggest thing that I see is that it's all in on their business, no plan B. I'm like, but there's no shame in working your plan A while you're still working. It doesn't mean you're plan B. So I don't know. The creator thinking piece, I want people to be inspired by the fact that they can ask better questions and start to even reverse engineer some of the things that they want to create.
Mhm. Oh, that's so good. I love that. And your now husband, did he sell his house at the same time or just
Yeah,
curious?
he
Yeah.
did. He sold his in May. And so I actually moved in on Valentine's Day, and then he ended up moving in May. Yeah, so we had a period, and which was really super fun. And in that home, what's so interesting is I did end up exiting my business a couple of years later, like 4 years later. It was 4 years later, and lo and behold, I did do retreats there. I host I hosted luxury VIP weekends with clients when I went into consultancy. When COVID happened and we couldn't do my small group masterminds with my clients that I would bring together, I had 10 and a half acres of land, a meditation garden, a pool. They were like, why can't we just come to your home and do it outside? And I was like, sure, we can. They're creative, think of business clients, right? And I was like, sure, we can. And next thing you know, I started hosting retreats at the property, small VIP weekends, private clients, some masterminds. We had 7 blues bashes there. My husband's a big blues guy. We had people get married there on the property. We just love sharing it because we felt like we were called there to share it. And so, yeah.
Wow. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, that sounds great, Michelle. Obviously, you had money at that point and things were, doing okay, which they obviously were. We don't have anything. You don't understand. We're broke. We don't, we're majorly in debt. We're just barely getting by paycheck to paycheck. What would you
Mhm.
say to someone like that?
You know what I say? I always say that, you can get stuck in, I want to affirm where people are. I've been there myself. I've made money and owed the IRS because I didn't save enough for taxes. I've made money and leveraged too much in credit cards. I leapt out and ended up in credit card and payday loans in my beginning years. So it's not that I don't understand what it's like to have your back up against the wall. Sometimes it's medically related. Some people are taking care of aging parents now, so I never want to ever say to somebody, the reality that you're in is not something that is challenging, because I think that there are times and seasons in life where things are really freaking hard and
Mhm.
it isn't easy to go into creator mode. Like the truth is that when you're weary, right?
Mhm.
However, when you if what you want is something different than the circumstances, the first place it starts is with a decision. I
Mhm.
want something different. And starting to explore, one of the things I always say, action is the enemy of thought. And so sometimes it's looking around and just reminding yourself that your circumstances aren't controlling everything, that
Mhm.
sometimes we have to do something to actually remind ourselves that we are actually in control of our money and that we can actually shift something. And so, what I say to people, look around. Is there something you can sell? Like sometimes just selling one thing. Like if you have a bunch of books, There, you could go put them up on a book site and make some money. If you have something, a bike you haven't ridden in the garage, throw it on Facebook Marketplace. Taking action to just move yourself in out of the weary space of I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I have credit card debt, whatever it is, you have to take an action, first a decision, second an action, and then the third, the education piece, the support, and how do I move from where I am to where I want to be? And that does not have to be paid support. That can be a book. Somebody can read Prosperity After Divorce, Take Charge of Your Finances, and recreate the life you want. They don't even have to be going through a divorce. It's all about personal, it's all about personal finance, but also through the lens of 6 pillars of recreating your life from all different aspects, not just the money, but it's all written through the lens of finance. So when I talk about habits and emotions, I'm using the budgeting and the finance lens to get you to think about, is there something that you could change here? I also think that, there are so many ways today, like Uber and Instacart, and ways that you can create money, that if you can carve out an extra 10 hours a week, you can likely shift your financial situation.
Mm.
And not for nothing, but like, I think about you, right? You were a truck driver and you're today doing something completely 360. Imagine if somebody just like something clicked for you, somebody shared something. I guess I want to ask you, like, somebody obviously said to you that they were doing something and shared an opportunity with you. It probably wasn't like a right away, oh yeah, I'm going to quit my day job and go do this, but there was a seed planted. So for you to go drastically from truck driving into what you're doing today, what happened for you? Did you see a different possibility? Did you make a decision? What was
Yeah,
it? Because it's a
I
big
mean, not
shift,
really.
girl.
I think I was raised, I'm really grateful that there was just no like, there was no box. I was never put in a box. And
Hmm.
so, being homeschooled, I think was part of it, that there just was never
Hmm.
a box. And so for me, actually, I was just I was kind of a workaholic, not kind of, I really was.
Yeah.
And it was getting slow and I was having all this downtime and I was like, this is unacceptable. And so I
Yeah.
started looking for something different to do to fill my downtime, not even necessarily quote make money, but just to like keep me from like spending money. And
Hmm.
because if you're off, I just found I would go out, with my friends, we'd
Hmm.
go to the restaurant, I'd have meals and I'd have beer, and then I'd like, it just cost money. And I'm like, well, I'm spending a lot of money on these days I'm not working. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I need to like figure out something to do on these days I'm not working. And so I got introduced to, financial services from a complete stranger off of social media. And I was like, oh, this is something I could do part-time. I could get a government license. I could prove I was smart because I was homeschooled. And so I actually always wanted to do something that was like mainstream approved and prove I could actually pass something because I never even got my GED or anything.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, perfect. Let's do that. And who knows? We'll see where it goes. Like I love trucking. I wasn't planning on quitting. I was just like I said, I was like, whether I make money or not, I don't really care. I can go to training, I can learn, and it will keep me busy. I can make friends because I didn't have a lot of friends in Edmonton at the time,
Yes.
actually, too. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I can go make friends. And I was like, I'll pay to go make friends. Like, I'll get my license to make friends. Like, literally, that was part of my thought process. I was like, perfect. This is a great way to get in
I
a group
love
of
this.
people.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll give it a year and see where it's at in a year. I'll show up to everything I possibly can with truck driving. And if it's meant to be, my only like tentative thought was in 2 years, they're putting electric logbooks into trucks. And I was like, I'm out.
Hmm.
So I was like, maybe this is my out in 2 years. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, thankfully I gave it a year because I really didn't see any quote success financially. It took 6 months to get my first paycheck,
Hmm.
and that wasn't the problem of my leadership. That was me. I was just like super skeptical, unsure, not sure what I was doing,
Hmm.
but I did show up. And I showed up, and like I said, and then within 5 months after that, I quit trucking, came full time, and we've been full time ever since.
Yeah.
But like I think the biggest thing really was, and if you got kids, I just think this is so impactful. I'm so grateful for my parents because while they questioned everything I did, they didn't question if I could do it. It was more like, why would you do that?
Yes. So
And that's a
good.
different mentality right there that I realized a lot of people are like, this is what you do, this is who you are. Where it was like,
Mhm.
well, you can do anything, but like, why would you, like, they question, like,
Yeah.
why would you do that? I
Yeah.
don't, but yeah, I'm super grateful for that.
I love that you're sharing that because I'm certain that you have a lot of people in your audience that are raising littles and teens. And I agree with you. The number one thing that they need to hear is that they're capable of anything.
Hmm.
And many times what they hear is, and that was me, get your head out of the clouds. Why would you do that? Take the safe route. And when you have a kid that is in that space, that is where we actually have our most creative thinking when we're young,
Hmm.
about the possibilities of life. Like, speak into it. My daughter wanted to go into culinary, and I had 300 restaurants that I insured. And I thought, oh my God, the one thing I would never do is
Right.
ever open up a restaurant because you're off like 2 days a year and you got to love it. And she loved culinary. I mean, she loved it. She cooked from the time she was 12. I come home to full cooked
Oh,
restaurant meals. And I never said, well, I want to give her the other side, like this and that. But what was great for me in insurance was that I had so many different variables of clients in my business space. And one of the clients that I had, she actually made almost $500,000 a year making her grandmother's biscotti recipe. She started making biscotti in her kitchen, and then she moved to a commercial kitchen that she rented, and then she never even went storefront. She never went storefront. And I thought, if I tell my daughter that she shouldn't have a restaurant or even give her the inspiration of the biscotti, like, I'm going to try to influence her. Like, I want her to go to school because this was her passion and figure out what it is she wants without me influencing it at all. Right. I would always share stories about clients and things that they did, but from a place of just letting the kids know that there were different things that people were doing and if that sparked inspiration or not. But I think that as parents, aunts, uncles, it doesn't matter. Anytime that you have just a human, speak into other humans and let them know that they are capable, that they are worthy, that they can lean into that element of building self-trust, even if they were not raised with parents that spoke into them and they didn't have a great circle. And, a lot of times what happens is when people get into this place of things are hard, we numb. We numb with Netflix, we numb with alcohol, we numb with drugs. It's like we've got to decide what breakthrough do we want to have, right? And if you're numbing, there's no breakthrough.
man, it's so good. And it's just making me think of my nieces and nephew. Actually, I'm like, I wonder if I do a little bit of that. Cause, yeah, you see, so like a culinary, that's a main one. It's like, oh yeah, all these people, do that and they don't do well. So then you want to stop them from, you know, going through that pain that you've seen other people go through, as opposed to giving them the opportunity of like learning from it. If it's not meant to be, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, not being that one. So thanks, a good reminder to
Yeah. Yeah. For me
give people
too.
that.
For me too. Right. Because we
Yeah.
tend to, when we're on the other side with our wisdom years and we've got lived experience, it's easy for us to want to help people, like, not to avoid the pain kind of stuff. Right.
Right.
So yeah. So it is easy, but if it's their passion, right. And I think that's the main thing. It's like, if it brings you joy, choose your hard, but make sure that, what the hard brings you joy.
And
Right.
yeah, and if you're listening to this on the other side, just realize that maybe you're like, wow, maybe I could do something more. Maybe everyone's been telling me I couldn't. And maybe they've been stopping me from something, just like we're talking about, where we're like someone's trying to protect you, your parents, your family, your husband, your wife, whatever, trying to protect
Mhm.
you, but they don't know what's inside you. And
That's
only
right.
you know what's inside you and what you're able to do. So utilize this too to, create your life for yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
What a
then
great way to go out. Yeah,
back it
I
up
love
with
it.
work ethic for sure.
Yeah.
That's so good. In wrapping up, I always have three final questions, and then anything. I've been watching the time, I'm like, man, we're gonna go forever. I could tell
I know, I
already.
can't believe
I was like,
this.
holy moly. Three final questions, and anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners. First and final question is, if someone is looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
The sentence that's coming up for me is, don't let blind people proofread your vision.
Ooh, I like that one. Ooh.
Yeah. That quote sticks with me because when you are, I think our purpose is inspired to us. Like, I think, a lot of us are searching for our purpose. I mean, when I took my exit, I was like in my purpose seeking chapter. Who
Mhm.
am I outside of what I do? I didn't know who that was. because I spent so many years in the grind, hustling the persona of the metrics, the success, all of the things. It's why the name of the book is The Path to Profits, an entrepreneur's guide to having it all and still having a life. And I went into my purpose chapter, um, and there's so many layers because sometimes I would call like this chapter my purpose chapter, but the truth was that everything that I was doing in that chapter was my purpose chapter. And had I listened to people that had right down to right before I bought the business I bought the agency that I worked for right before I turned 30. And my father was like, it's never going to work. Like I took out the largest SBA loan that had ever been done by the bank. I was under 30. I fell short $23,000 and I needed another $23,000. And I went to my parents and my dad was like, yeah, no. And I don't even think that they had it. That's the story that I like to tell myself. But I remember my dad saying, like, no, you know what? That guy's probably going to take the business back. He was holding paper. It's too big of a risk, blah, blah, blah. Why are you taking this kind of a risk? And I think that I didn't need to hear that at the time. What I needed to hear is go create the other 23,000. Don't stop now. I was like a week and a half away from closing. And I didn't have a rich uncle and I didn't have rich parents. And you know, I just feel like the don't let blind people proofread your vision is because they couldn't see it. They couldn't see what I saw.
And you made it happen.
And I made it happen. Yeah.
How did you raise the 23,000? Everyone
So
wants to know.
it's really cool actually. My business partner who I was going into business with, another woman who was a friend, it's so crazy. Her husband went to his grandmother and borrowed the $23,000 on my behalf to get me to the final finish line. And so I never knew this woman. Like he went to bat for me and I had a year to pay it back. And it was I'm high in integrity. You keep your word no matter what, you be your word. And he knew that. They had walked with me as friends. And so I think he felt good doing that. And she trusted him to be able to know that he was making a good recommendation.
Wow.
And it all came together. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Crazy.
so cool. I love that.
Now, could you imagine a whole deal like that falling apart, $1 million deal falling apart over $23,000?
Yeah, it happens lots, I believe,
Yeah.
actually.
Well,
It
I
would be
was like, oh,
shocked.
this can't be happening to me. Literally
Yeah.
2 days before closing, the SBA, the lender told us that there were points that they had not told us about. It was like SBA points, not bank points. And it put us like both needing another $23,000. We had all of the money and that's what we ended up. I was short. She was able to figure it out. And I thought, how could I be this close? And it happens to people. Yeah.
That's amazing. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why? You just said a quote, but what's another one?
I think for me, it's Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you. I just lean into that a lot. When I feel unsure, I just remember I'm not here. I'm here on purpose and for purpose. And so for me, that is my favorite. It's my favorite in all days, getting on my knees and just knowing that on the hard days, the weary days, the great days, I always start and end my day with gratitude and knowing that I'm here on purpose.
I love that. Third and final question, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Kind. I think it's kind. My word this year is relentless. So that's what came up first.
Relentless and kind.
I'm relentlessly pursuing my purpose this year. Like, no, I know I've been playing small. I know I'm meant to do, really, my mission is to help 10,000 businesses stay in business and not just survive, but thrive. So this relentless came up and I'm like, I don't think that's probably the right thing for my gravestone, but I'm really kind. And I that's what I would want. I would want that in my obituary. I would want it on my gravestone. One word on your gravestone. That is really hard, Angela. I want to know yours.
It keeps changing because I love talking to people. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Like, I'm going to take all of my podcasts. It's going to be all.
Yeah. I'm a list person too. So I'm going to be like, that's such a great question. I'm going to contemplate that today. Because
Yeah.
the first word that came to mind was relentless, just because it's my word of the year. But kind is really what I would want to be remembered for. You know, a life well lived. That's
I
I
always said
really
like she changed the world, but I've kind of got it adapted where it's like she changed herself. Like, I don't know, it keeps
yeah.
changing. And that's why I love
Well,
this
you
question. Like
didn't
I
give
said,
me a sentence. You gave me one
I
word. If you
said
gave me
one
a
word or
sentence,
sentence, one word or sentence.
oh,
I did say one word.
oh, a sentence. Oh, I would want it. I would. I think it would. I think it's so. mm, you know, a life well lived. Like, and that means so many things. It means that my family didn't get crumbs. That I had really great, conversations, whether it was somebody on the plane and I only met them once and never saw them again, or that I was invested in people's, their growth and in their path, and that I was a kind and grateful human for the journey and compassionate. And my mom is a woman of grace. And I think those are the beautiful qualities that I learned from her that I'm able to emulate today. I do less interrupting. I still talk a lot, as you can tell, right? But I've learned to listen more than talk, which took me a decade or two to learn in business, right? Because you're like fired up about the thing you do. But yeah, I've been very fortunate too to have a really great example of what it looks like to walk not just sure-footedly in the world, but like in a beautiful, compassionate way.
I love that. We
Yeah.
got a couple minutes to wrap up. What's something we didn't touch on today that you want to leave the listeners with?
I would say keep investing in your growth, keep learning, have a zest for learning. And it doesn't have to, it could be learning cooking, a recipe. It could be learning a new way to, work out your body. It could be, for me, it's been breath work this last couple of years. But have a zest for learning. Never stop learning. I
I
think
love
that
that.
that's where no matter, it doesn't cost anything necessarily to learn. Like we can learn on YouTube, we can learn in books, we can go to the library, pick something out, we can turn on a podcast. You're learning right now. If you're listening to the show, it's have a zest for learning. Don't
So
let
good.
that fire go. Mhm.
Well, guys, I know you want to share this. Like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to Michelle. All our information, our books, all the stuff will be in the show notes. Definitely chat. If we can go out there, if we can change one starfish or one life at a time together, we can help change the world. Thanks for being on, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.